with being a pathological hypocrite is that the illness comes with the utter conviction that nobody could possibly realize that you've just contradicted yourself. In our fourth story in the countdown, just asked former House Speaker Newt Gingrich, insisting that accusing the CIA of lying is indefensible if a Democrat does it, not if a Republican does it, or four of them. Mr. Gingrich screwing up even in his only remaining area of expertise, namely when a Speaker of the House is so up to his neck in partisan politics that he must or she must resign. You know, like Newt was.
I think that with Speaker Pelosi's comments last Thursday, particularly the ones in which she alleged that the Central Intelligence Agency routinely lies to Congress, that she really disqualified herself to be Speaker. I mean, there's no problem with her being a member of the House.
So you think?
I think the Democrats should get a new Speaker.
Gingrich has claimed that this is not about politics, but rather national security. But the former Speaker was utterly unprepared for Diane Sawyer's immediate pivot to those in his own party who have also accused the CIA of lying to Congress.
For instance, Congressman Peter Hoekstra, who was head of the House Intelligence Committee at the time, wrote a letter in which he, on another issue, said this about the CIA: we cannot have an intelligence community that covers up what it does and then lies to Congress. That's a Republican saying it, and they're saying, where were you then? You didn't call for him to resign.
Well, I think in that particular letter, he's fighting with them over a particular report he wants. This is about a year and a half ago.
Should he be repudiated for those words, too?
Well, in that case, he's writing a specific letter asking them to change something that they were doing.
So
he did not say in that letter the CIA routinely lies to the Congress.
Well, he says lies. He says what it does and then lies to Congress.
And I think that they actually had to come back and testify. I think that it's important for Congress to keep the CIA under observation. It's important for them to have the CIA report regularly. But I think what Panetta said Friday is very telling. It is illegal to lie to Congress. And the CIA doesn't do it.
My God, that much suspension of reality is impressive and still so factually wrong on so many points. What CIA Director Panetta actually said in a statement on May 15th, quote, "Let me be clear, it is not our policy or practice to mislead Congress." As MediaMatters.org points out, that wording carefully sidesteps the issue of whether the CIA did in fact lie, despite having a policy not to. Besides, Mr. Panetta has conceded that the CIA accounts of those meetings might not be accurate. And where was Mr. Gingrich back in December of 2007 when Republicans like Minority Leader Boehner were crucifying the authors of the National Intelligence Estimate on Iran because they had concluded that Iran had halted its nuclear weapons program? The NIE is so professionally unworthy, so intellectually indefensible, and so fundamentally misleading that it is damaging to our national security. The NIE appears to be a deliberate attempt to undermine the policies of President Bush by members of his own government. Oh, yeah, that was written by Mr. Gingrich in his weekly Winning the Future newsletter. And though Gingrich claimed to be directing his wrath at highly partisan State Department bureaucrats, the fact is that the CIA is pivotal in compiling those national intelligence estimates. Let's turn now to Newsweek magazine senior editor, MSNBC political analyst Jonathan Alter. John, good evening.
Hi, Keith.
If Republicans want to call for the Speaker's resignation, is Newt Gingrich the best messenger because there's nothing else for him to resign from?
Yeah, let's turn back the clock to 1998 when Newt Gingrich had to resign as Speaker. Why? Because he had been calling for Bill Clinton to be removed from office as president because of a sexual matter at the very time that Gingrich was having a torrid affair with a staffer whom he subsequently married. So for that hypocrisy, he was forced by members of his own party to resign. So he is a bit of an expert on this area of what merits resignation. His problem is, Keith, that he comes from the pre-Google era. And he actually thinks that you can just say things that totally contradict something you've said in the past and get away with it. And I think he has such contempt for what he considers to be the bubbleheads of television that they won't catch him on it. And he's just forgotten that it's elemental now, and any researcher with a few keystrokes can prove him a hypocrite.
Yeah, we're getting to the point where we can do it with robots. The other point he made, he had this really sort of arcane and as usual, a sort of a sophistry argument. It's not beautiful on paper, and then if you think about it, and it makes absolutely no sense whatsoever, that as being third in line for the presidency, to question the veracity of the CIA disqualifies Nancy Pelosi on national security grounds. Is there not in there also this idea that if she's doing her job correctly, she can't be the leader of the House, or she couldn't be third. I mean, there really is over here and over here on this one.
The thing about Gingrich is, unlike most Republicans, he actually has some interesting, fresh ideas. He talks about nanotechnology and other things that are intellectually compelling. He's a smart guy, but he has a sort of a Tourette syndrome problem that appears every so often, where he just spews forth this hyper-partisan nonsense that clearly disqualifies him, for instance, from running for president or otherwise.
10 years ago, matter of fact.
Yeah, and it pops up like Tourette's at the strangest times, and it doesn't really make a lot of sense. And you kind of wonder why the good Newt, the one who actually offers provocative issues for debate, can't appear more often.
Well, as in the clip with Diane Sawyer, where he was clearly nonplussed by the sudden realization that he was, oh yeah, this hand is contradicting that one. We of course know this is the first time that any Republican has attacked Nancy Pelosi for something they have themselves done. But we've got Hoekstra accused the CIA of lying. Boehner did it about Iran. After the NIE on Iran, Bush essentially accused the CIA of contributing at least false information. I don't think he used the word lie. So as a political strategy, how is this supposed to help Republicans if it reminds people of every time the Republicans did exactly the same bloody thing?
Well, they hope that people don't notice that. And Nancy Pelosi, remember, Keith, she's from San Francisco.
That's right. That's almost Guantanamo. It sounds like Guantanamo.
If you go back to the 1984 Republican convention, they talked about the San Francisco Democrats, and they thought they were hitting pay dirt with the American public to go after people from that part of the country as being these weak-kneed liberals. It has worked for them in the past. There's new survey data showing it no longer works. The American people are not responding to those kinds of arguments. The base does, but nobody else.
San Francisco Bay, Guantanamo Bay. With all these holes that we've seen this week in the CIA record keeping about these briefings, wrong dates, they had the anachronistic use of acronyms, wrong people, wrong job descriptions, months without dates in them, and unidentified briefers from the CIA, and misidentifying the director of the CIA as a sitting congressman. Where is this headed? Is it an investigation, and if so, of whom?
Well, there should be an investigation of the CIA, and we could turn it into what we had in the 1970s, a far-reaching investigation of how effectively they do their job that would go into the torture matter and other things. I would argue the country needs that right now. That's a separate issue from prosecutions. But to shed light on what happened, on what sorts of interrogation techniques they used, on whether they know which end is up at the CIA is clearly in the national interest. The White House doesn't want it. They want to move forward. Pelosi, who was covering her own rear end in this throughout this matter, would do well to now move forward with a full investigation.
She has no choice, does she? I mean, she is now in the shark position.